I was standing on the front lawn of my grandfather's house, the weak autumn sun hitting the faded paint on the shutters, when my cousin Trent announced to the officers, in the tone of a man trying to sound authoritative while trembling inside, "She's trespassing. She doesn't live here. I'm the rightful owner." He said it like he expected applause. The officers didn't react. Not yet. I remember how the breeze carried the scent of damp leaves, how the lawn still had the faint outline of the chair where Grandpa liked to sit during warm months, and how my heart pounded in my chest with a strange combination of sadness and certainty. The house held decades of memories: summer evenings with fireflies, Christmas mornings when Grandma made cinnamon rolls, the hushed conversations we shared when he knew he was approaching his last days. And now here I was, being told by Trent, of all people, that I didn't belong on the property I had spent half my life caring for. But I didn't argue. Arguing with Trent was like shouting into a well. You wasted breath, and the only thing that came back was your own frustration echoing at you. Instead, I stepped forward slowly, letting the strap of my bag settle against my shoulder, and reached inside for the envelope I had prepared days earlier. I handed it to the closest officer without ceremony. He opened it, unfolding the document carefully. As his eyes scanned the page, his expression shifted, subtle but unmistakable. He looked up at Trent. "This," he said, lifting the page slightly, "is a recorded transfer of title. The property belongs to her." For a moment Trent didn't move. He just blinked, as if the words hadn't quite registered. Then his face collapsed, not slowly but like a structure losing integrity all at once. Beams snapping, foundation giving way. He sputtered, voice cracking. No, that's wrong. That's not the right document. This is some trick." The officer remained expressionless. "Sir, it's county stamped, notarized, and recorded. It's legitimate." I felt Trent's eyes burning into me, hatred simmering beneath disbelief. He had expected me to be helpless. He had waited for this moment to humiliate me. He had believed the house was already his. The officers moved aside, giving me a path. One of them used the spare key Trent had forgotten to confiscate. Grandpa's old key, the one he kept hidden under the ceramic frog near the steps. The officer pushed the door open for me, polite and firm. "Ma'am, you're free to enter. You are the legal owner." I stepped inside. The air smelled faintly like lemon cleaner and old memories. The living room was dim, curtains drawn, as if the house itself had been holding its breath while all this played out. I placed my hand on the doorway, grounding myself. Behind us, Trent let out a dry, bitter laugh. "She wasn't supposed to find that." The officer turned sharply toward him. "What did you say?" But Trent didn't repeat it. He just looked away, jaw twitching in a way I recognized, a tell he had since childhood, a sign he'd cornered himself. That moment, the title, the officers, the shift of authority, wasn't the beginning. It was merely the explosion that followed a slow, quiet fuse. Because what neither officer knew yet was that 3 weeks earlier, at the reading of the will, there had been absolutely no mention of a title transfer. Yet I clearly remembered Grandpa signing something months before his death. "My name is Evelyn Hart, and I am 66 years old." At this stage in life, you stop pretending to be impressed by noise. You appreciate silence. You know how to read people, their intentions, their insecurities, the motivations tucked behind their words. I have raised 2 children, buried my husband, survived an illness that tested the shape of my soul, and built a small bookkeeping business that never made me rich but gave me something equally valuable: clarity. I've learned that betrayal rarely roars. It comes quietly. It moves subtly. It steals its way across the room on soft feet. But I never expected betrayal from within my own family, let alone from my younger cousin Trent. My grandfather, Charles Hart, was the person I was closest to in the world after my children. He was a meticulous man, organized, intentional, thoughtful in the way people are when they view life as a long sequence of lessons rather than a sprint. In his last years, his hands shook, but his mind remained sharp. He couldn't hold a pen steadily, but he never lost his ability to reason or his awareness of people's character. Grandpa trusted me because I had spent years helping him sort out his bills, medical appointments, and paperwork. He liked to joke I had a ledger book for a brain and a steel vault for a heart, strong enough to protect what mattered. When Grandma died, he grew more reliant on routine, and I became part of that routine. I visited weekly, sometimes twice a week, bringing groceries, cleaning supplies, and conversation. Trent, on the other hand, visited only when he needed money, a signature, or an escape. He was the type who treated every problem as temporary, not because he solved it, but because he ran from it. Still, even with our differences, I never thought he would manipulate the estate after Grandpa died. But during the confrontation on the lawn that day, when Trent muttered, "She wasn't supposed to find that," the officers stiffened. And I knew what they were thinking. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was premeditated. 3 weeks before that confrontation, we attended the reading of the will in a cramped attorney's office. We sat in a semicircle while the lawyer cleared his throat like he was preparing to perform surgery instead of paperwork. The will stated that Grandpa's assets, including the house, would be left to all grandchildren jointly unless a previously recorded transfer superseded it. A standard clause. A neutral clause. But no such transfer was mentioned. Not one word. Odd, I thought. Because months earlier, I clearly remembered Grandpa asking me to help him review a document he wanted notarized. He had me hand him each page, steadying his hand as he signed. Afterward, he placed it in his fireproof safe and told me, with unusual seriousness, "Evie, if anything seems off after I'm gone, open the safe. The combination is on a slip in your mother's old Bible." I had assumed he meant taxes or small housekeeping matters. I had not imagined he meant this. Because 2 days after that will reading, I drove to Grandpa's house, only to find the locks had been changed, and Trent standing inside like he already owned the place. If you looked at my family from the outside, smiling at holiday dinners, exchanging predictable jokes, posing for photos where we all looked surprisingly coordinated, you'd think we were peaceful, functional, harmonious. But families are like rivers, calm on the surface, currents churning underneath. My mother was Grandpa's eldest daughter. She died 6 years before him, leaving my siblings and me bonded to him even more tightly. My father remarried and drifted away emotionally, so Grandpa became my anchor. It wasn't out of obligation. It was love, friendship, and respect. Trent came from my uncle's side of the family, and from the time he was young, people excused his behavior as energetic, rebellious, and later, just finding himself. In reality, he was always looking for shortcuts, ways around accountability, around responsibility, around consequences. A gambling stint here, a failed business there, a series of unpaid debts trailing behind him like tin cans tied to a car bumper. Aunt Margaret, his mother, enabled him with a level of devotion that defied both logic and healthy boundaries. She once paid off his overdue rent using her retirement savings, insisting, "He just needs a fresh start." She said that at least 7 times over the years. Despite all this, at family gatherings, we maintained the illusion of unity. We carved turkey together, reminisced over Grandma's recipes, swapped uneventful stories about work and neighbors. But beneath the surface, tension simmered. I tried to stay neutral while still protecting Grandpa's interests. When his health began declining, I became his unofficial caretaker. Trent rarely visited unless Aunt Margaret dragged him along. Grandpa saw it all clearly. One afternoon, about a year before he passed, he told me while sipping his tea, "Evie, some people grow roots, and some grow excuses. Don't mistake one for the other." I asked if he was talking about Trent. He just smiled. After Grandpa died, grief softened even the rough edges of our relationships, for a short time. At the funeral, people embraced, cried, shared stories. But I noticed Trent standing apart, scanning faces as though waiting for an opportunity rather than mourning a loss. The will reading confirmed it. He leaned forward in his chair when the house was mentioned, as if waiting to snatch it from thin air. But nothing was left solely to him. Nothing remotely hinted at his inheritance fantasies. I assumed that would be the end of it. I was wrong. 2 days later, When I pulled into Grandpa's driveway, my stomach tightened. Something felt different, off balance. I walked to the door carrying a basket of cleaning supplies, thinking I'd begin sorting through Grandpa's belongings gently, room by room. I entered the code on the keypad out of habit before remembering. It used to be there, yes, but this one was different. The entire lock had been replaced. Before I could step back, the door opened. Trent stood in the doorway, leaning against the frame with his arms crossed like a security guard protecting a vault. "Evie," he said smugly, "you shouldn't be here." "This is family property," I replied. He lifted his chin. "Not anymore." That night, after he slammed the door shut, I made a phone call that revealed something impossible. According to county records, a deed transferring the house solely to Trent had been filed only hours after Grandpa died. I didn't sleep the night I found the locks changed. I tossed and turned, replaying every interaction from the past months, every detail of Grandpa's decline, every time Trent had lurked around the edges of family conversations with a calculating look. By morning, I was nauseated from lack of rest and too much clarity. The next day, I called the county recorder's office. The woman on the phone, polite and brisk, said, "There was indeed a quitclaim deed recorded transferring ownership of the property to your cousin, dated 3 weeks before your grandfather's death." 3 weeks before. 3 weeks. I closed my eyes. 3 weeks before Grandpa died, he couldn't even hold a spoon without me steadying his hand. I was feeding him soup. He could barely sign his name on his Medicare paperwork. The clerk continued, "The document appears properly notarized and processed." I thanked her, hung up, and sat in silence. My grandfather, meticulous, ethical, thoughtful, would never have transferred his entire home to Trent, especially not at the expense of the rest of us. Something was wrong. Deeply, fundamentally wrong. That evening, I drove back to Grandpa's house. Trent wasn't there this time. His truck was gone. I walked around the property, noticing the curtains drawn in unusual places, trash cans moved, lights left on inside as if someone had been rummaging through things. Through the window, I spotted boxes piled in the hallway. Trent had already begun moving in. With every step around the house, my heart pounded louder. Not from fear, but from certainty. When I got home, I retrieved my mother's old Bible, the one Grandpa had given me after she died. I flipped through until I found the slip of paper he'd mentioned years earlier. The safe's combination. I drove back the next morning, let myself into the house using the key hidden under the ceramic frog. Thankfully, Trent hadn't discovered it yet, and walked straight to the master bedroom closet. The fireproof safe was still there, dusty but untouched. Inside on top was the document Grandpa had notarized 6 months earlier, long before his health declined. It was a property transfer agreement leaving the house to me, explicitly citing years of personal care, support, and financial management provided by my granddaughter, Evelyn Hart. Signed. Witnessed. Stamped. I felt something inside me steady. This was real. This was deliberate. This was his final act of trust. But beneath that document sat a thick manila envelope. I opened it and found printed screenshots of threatening text messages, notes in Grandpa's shaky handwriting, a timeline of encounters with Trent, photocopies of documents Grandpa suspected Trent might try to forge. My breath caught. He had prepared for this. He had known betrayal was coming. He trusted me to finish what he started. And among those screenshots was one message that made my skin crawl. "Old man, sign the deed or I'll make things difficult for your granddaughter." Finding the evidence in the safe changed everything. It wasn't just a matter of family conflict anymore. It was fraud, coercion, and an attempt to steal a house from a dying man. And that wasn't something I was going to let slide. For 3 days, I became a one-woman investigative team. I started by assembling everything Grandpa had left behind into a binder. I added sections, chronology, financial patterns, screenshots, a summary of Trent's debts, even a list of witnesses who had seen Grandpa's health decline. Then I included pictures of Grandpa's handwriting from recent months. Shaky, inconsistent, nothing like the smooth signature on the forged deed. I printed Trent's social media posts showing him inside the house a week after Grandpa died, captioned with things like, "New beginnings," and "leveling up." One video even showed him measuring the living room wall for a TV mount. He had claimed the house before the will was even read. The next step was a formal legal consultation. I found a new estate attorney, one with a strong reputation, unlike the will attorney, who seemed more like a tax preparer than a legal expert. Her office was sleek and organized, with a wall of case files that hinted at years of experience. She listened carefully while flipping through my binder. Every few pages, she made a low hum of concern. When she reached the forged deed, she held it up to the light and tapped the signature. "This is a reproduction," she said plainly. "Copied?" I asked. "Copied, lifted, and pasted," she said. "Probably from a previous document. The pressure is wrong, the ink flow is wrong, the spacing is inconsistent. Amateur work, honestly." She ran software to compare the signatures. The verdict was immediate. Forgery. Next, she ordered a title search. That's when we discovered something even worse. The quitclaim deed, supposedly signed 3 weeks before Grandpa's death, had been recorded 4 hours after Grandpa died. 4 hours. Meaning the date on the document was fabricated. The notary stamp was suspicious. And the entire submission was illegal. "This isn't just fraud," the attorney said. "It's identity misuse, forgery, elder exploitation, and possibly coercion." We prepared a packet for law enforcement containing every piece of evidence. She also recommended filing for a temporary protective order to prevent Trent from destroying items inside the house. Meanwhile, Trent left me a voicemail. "You can't win, Evie. The deed is done. Just walk away." His confidence told me one thing. He had absolutely no idea how the law worked. A week later, the sheriff's office called. They wanted both of us present at the property. When I arrived, Trent was already there, standing on the porch holding a trash bag full of Grandpa's belongings, as if preparing to erase every trace of the man he had betrayed. That morning, the fog sat low across the grass, giving the scene a muted, surreal quality. 2 deputies stood beside their cruiser, hands resting calmly at their belts, while Trent paced on the porch with restless energy. When he saw me, he smirked. "Good luck. You're going to look ridiculous when they tell you to leave." One deputy lifted a hand in mild warning. "Sir, let's remain civil. We're here to determine lawful possession until the matter is resolved." Trent shot me an arrogant glance and handed over the forged deed. The deputy reviewed it without expression. "Thank you, Mr. Campbell. We'll take a closer look in the car." Then he turned to me. "Ma'am, do you have documentation as well?" I nodded and opened my folder. The deputy took the notarized transfer, flipped the pages slowly, and murmured to his partner. The partner leaned over, scanning the dates, signatures, stamps. Their body language shifted almost immediately. "Ma'am, did you file this with your attorney?" "Yes," I replied. "And the county?" Trent scoffed. "Fake. Obviously fake. She's making this up. She's always been manipulative." I didn't respond. Silence is often more powerful. One deputy stepped forward. "Sir, do you have any evidence supporting your claim that this signature is authentic?" Trent's mouth tightened. "It's obvious. I mean, he signed it. He told me he was leaving it to me. Do you have witnesses?" "No." "Do you have recordings?" "No." "Do you have any corroborating documentation?" He hesitated. It's just how it was." The deputy raised an eyebrow. "That's not evidence." They moved a few steps aside to speak privately. I remained still, hands clasped in front of me, my breath steady despite the tension curled in my stomach. The house loomed behind us, silent, waiting. After a few minutes, the deputy returned. "Ma'am, based on the paperwork, it appears you have the lawful claim. We're going to escort you inside while we conduct additional verification. Trent exploded. This is insane. She tricked him. She manipulated him. The deputy held firm. Sir, lower your voice. Then something happened that neither of us could have predicted. Trent muttered under his breath, but loud enough for all of us to hear. I shouldn't have texted him. I should have just forged the medical papers too. The deputies froze. Sir, one said tightly. Repeat that. Trent's face strained. I didn't mean that. You misheard. Everyone misheard. No, the deputy replied. We didn't. That single sentence shifted the entire tone of the investigation, from civil dispute to potential criminal case. Within minutes, they separated us for questioning. Trent's confidence evaporated, and he had no idea the consequences that were already closing in around him. The deputies questioned me first. We stood near the mailbox, mist still hanging in the air. One deputy opened his notebook. Ma'am, did you know what he meant by forging medical documents? No, I said truthfully. But I have reason to believe he forged the deed. I handed over the binder. He flipped through it slowly, occasionally pausing at a screenshot or annotation. His expression hardened. This is thorough, he said. Very thorough. I'm a bookkeeper, I replied. Documentation keeps me sane. Meanwhile, across the yard, Trent was pacing in frantic circles as the other deputy questioned him. His hands gestured wildly, his voice rising and falling like a man trying to outrun a collapsing truth. The deputy returned after 20 minutes. Ma'am, he said, based on your documentary evidence and Mr. Campbell's statements, we're placing a temporary hold on his access to the property. You are the lawful owner pending legal confirmation. I nodded, not triumphant, just exhausted. They escorted Trent off the property, not in cuffs, but with the firm authority of officers who had heard enough contradictions to justify removal. He sputtered excuses, swearing he could explain everything, but no one was listening anymore. Not even his own mother, who stood across the street in her car, watching with trembling hands. Once his truck disappeared, the deputy handed me a card. The district attorney's office will contact you. Given the evidence and his statements today, expect charges. Inside the house, I found the living room in disarray. Drawers half open, boxes stacked, personal belongings tossed aside. Fortunately, nothing was destroyed. Just rummaged through, hurriedly and carelessly, like Trent was trying to rewrite the story of the house by force. Over the next weeks, the legal process began. The forged deed was voided. Fraud charges were filed. A restraining order was granted. The unethical attorney who had helped Trent? He lost his license after an ethics review exposed a pattern of questionable notarizations. Trent moved into a cramped apartment outside town, where, according to family rumor, he alternated between anger and self-pity. He insisted to anyone who would listen that it was all a misunderstanding, that I had manipulated Grandpa, that he was the real victim. But here's the thing about consequences. They don't need anyone's permission to exist. Truth has weight. Evidence has gravity. And eventually, both settle exactly where they belong. Yet even with the legal victory, emotional closure didn't arrive right away. The house felt like a museum of memories, humming with echoes. One afternoon, while sorting through Grandpa's desk, I found a sealed envelope labeled, "For Evie, after the dust settles." Inside was a letter that changed the entire emotional landscape of my grief, and taught me the real meaning of justice. The envelope was thin, the paper soft from age. Grandpa's handwriting wavered across the page, each letter a testament to how hard he must have worked to write it. I unfolded it slowly, afraid the ink might dissolve under my fingertips. "Evie," it began, "if you're reading this, it means things unfolded the way I feared." My breath caught. He wrote about the years we spent together. Doctor's appointments, grocery trips, evenings drinking tea while the old clock ticked in the background. He said I had been his constant, the person who kept his life anchored when age tried to shake it loose. Then the tone shifted. I anticipated conflict, he wrote. Not because I wanted it, but because I understood the nature of people who seek shortcuts. You have always taken the long path, the honest path. I know it hasn't been easy. He apologized for burdening me with responsibility. He explained why he had transferred the property early, not to exclude the other grandchildren, but because he feared Trent's growing desperation. People show you who they are long before they show you what they want, he wrote. And Trent has been showing us his nature for years. I pressed the letter to my chest. For the first time in months, I felt the grief, not sharp, but warm. A release. Over the following months, I restored the home with gentle dedication. I repainted the porch railing. I sorted old photographs. I donated Grandpa's clothing and kept his favorite cardigans. I replanted the herb garden, a tradition between us. The house slowly shifted from a battleground back to a sanctuary. My children visited often, helping me fix small things and encouraging me to move into the house fully. I did. One room at a time, I made it mine, not by erasing Grandpa's presence but by weaving my life into the fabric he left behind. Family dynamics gradually settled. Aunt Margaret refused to speak to me for weeks, then months. Eventually, she called, awkward, hesitant, remorseful. She admitted she had wanted to believe Trent's fantasies because it made her feel less guilty about his failures. I forgave her. Not because she earned it, but because holding anger made my chest feel heavy. As for Trent, the legal process unfolded predictably. He pled guilty to lesser charges after his attorney abandoned him. He received probation, community service, and a permanent mark on his record. He still tells people the situation was complicated, but fewer and fewer believe him. Time softened the edges of the ordeal, but the letter in my desk drawer reminded me of something deeper than betrayal. Love. A grandfather's trust. A connection strengthened through years of quiet companionship. The house wasn't just an inheritance. It was a legacy. But Grandpa's final paragraph, his final piece of wisdom, was the part that stayed with me the longest. Grandpa ended his letter with a message that has shaped my understanding of both justice and revenge ever since. Revenge is loud. Justice is quiet. Choose the quiet path, Evie. It lasts longer. When I first read it, I didn't fully grasp the depth of what he meant. But over time, as the hearings concluded, as Trent faded from the center of family conversations, as the house regained its warmth, I understood. Revenge is fueled by the desire to inflict pain. Justice is fueled by the desire to restore truth. Revenge digs outward. Justice roots inward. Throughout the ordeal, I never yelled. I never threatened. I never sought to humiliate Trent publicly, though the temptation was there and the opportunity abundant. Instead, I documented. I stayed calm. I let the truth speak louder than my anger ever could. And in doing so, I learned something profound. The most powerful revenge is letting the truth reveal someone's character. Quietly, undeniably, permanently. I share this not to boast, but to offer something useful to anyone listening. If someone tries to take from you what you have rightfully earned, your home, your peace, your dignity, do not react with fire. React with clarity. Gather evidence. Stand firm. Move deliberately, not impulsively. Trust the weight of truth. Because when justice arrives, it doesn't make a spectacle of itself. It simply settles, like dust after a storm, revealing what was always there beneath the chaos. I think often about that moment on the lawn, when the officer handed me the title and said, "Ma'am, this is yours." His voice wasn't triumphant, it was matter of fact. The truth didn't need embellishment. Now, when I sit in Grandpa's favorite recliner, I feel a quiet peace. Not because I won, but because I honored him. I chose the path he trusted me to walk. Truthfully, this story isn't about a house. It's about understanding that resilience is a form of love. That patience can be a weapon. That justice, real justice, isn't about punishing someone else. It's about restoring what was lost. So here is the wisdom I leave you with, just as Grandpa left it for me. When someone betrays you, don't chase revenge. Stand with truth. Truth doesn't run. It endures. And when the world finally catches up, you'll be standing exactly where you were supposed to be all along.